Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Evelyn, the founder of Love and Connection, helping you find your forever love. And I'm so glad that you are here with us today. And today's conversation is one that I think so many people need to hear. And we often grow up believing that if two people love each other, that should be enough to make relationship work. But really, in real life, we see that love alone does not always sustain a relationship. You can love someone deeply and still struggle with connection. You can still struggle with alignment. Maybe you guys are not aligning with your values are not aligning. Sometimes it could be your goals. You can even love someone and still feel unsafe because trust and respect are also maybe kind of missing in the relationship. So today, Adam and I are talking about why love is not enough and the key ingredient that can actually help you build trust. So, Adam, welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Adam. I'm the momentum coach helping you get unstuck, and I'm excited to talk about this with you.
Awesome. So, yeah, Adam, I know that, like I said, you tend to fall in love and we think that, love is enough, that foundation is always good to be there. But based on your own experience, what do you think? Do you think love is enough?
No, oh gosh, no. I remember I remember dating a woman and I was madly in love with her. But our communication style was absolute garbage. And no matter how much we tried to communicate, we could just never get our points across and solve any of our problems. And
Mm.
ultimately, the relationship failed because even though we loved each other and we loved each other so much, the communication just wasn't there. And I think in regards with relationships are more like gardens. You got to put the effort in, you got to plant the plants, you got to weed the weeds, and sometimes you just don't have the right equipment to make a relationship or a garden work.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like you talked about, that was a good story. Yeah. I was like, I think one of the most important ingredients that I know is communication, like you mentioned. You know, and communication is a lot. It's not just it's not just your tone, it's the way you talk to each other, is the honesty, is the empathy that you guys have for each other. And I think those things are important. I think a lot of couples actually struggle with that. There are different communication styles, and I think it's very, very important that you talk about that earlier on, and that goes into even how you manage conflict, the best time to even communicate. No, I think it's not every time that you talk about issues. Timing is a thing. So those important factors are very important. Even non-verbal expressions, your attitude, all those things. Yeah, so I do really, yeah, I find communication pretty important.
Oh, it's absolutely critical. I think the Romans said it the best. They didn't believe in what we would consider love or our version of love. They believed a lot in it is our job and duty to teach our partners about us and
Yeah.
how we want to be communicated, how we want to be loved, how we want to be pleasured. But it's also our partner's job to teach us how they want to be communicated with. And I think when it comes to communication, it's a lot of observing and understanding because I
Mm.
think sadly, most people don't even understand their own communication style. They don't understand how they're coming across or how they want to be talked to, which is kind of a shame. Have you encountered that in your practice?
Yeah, of course. Even like when I'm having clients and I'm kind of asking them questions about different things, their personality or just their stories, because I always tend to know, I want to know your background stories, right? And I could, even from the way the conversation, the way we talk, I can figure out that, oh, this guy has a lot of work to do, or this girl has a lot of work to do. So yeah, I would say communication is very important, and I always ask about talk about what's your communication style. How do you want to be? How do you like to communicate with your person, right? And those are important questions because I think it's something that a lot of people just ignore, or they kind of think that, as maybe because as we get to know each other, it's gonna be different. Or some people, I was watching a short clip today, so the way they were communicating, so the girl could say, oh, look at you, big head. And she was making those kind of statement, and the guy was like, but is that a pet's name now? Or and she keep instead of her listening to what he's saying, instead of her to see his body language and see how concerned he is about that particular way that she communicates, she kept arguing and she kept, just kind of ignoring his feelings. And I feel like that was like, and I think the relationship did not work. And I think that's the problem. And a lot of people are not listening, a lot of people are not kind of like trying to understand your partner, trying to ask them how they would prefer, the kind of how they would want you to talk to them, and or you'll see how the way you communicate affects them, and see how you can improve. Some people would say, "Oh, this is just the way I am," and my voice is just so loud. But sometimes I think it's very important that we listen, and we tend to understand our partner, and then we adjust because our partner will actually help us grow too if we choose the right partner, right?
I honestly always hate it when people are like, "That's just how I am." I'm like, "That's an excuse not to change." And in the course of your life, you have to change if you want to succeed. Like, I'm sorry to tell you this. And I love that you brought up the fact that most people, they're just kind of too into themselves when it comes to communicating with their partner, and they're not listening to what's going on within their partner. For example, that girl who's being super combative and just not seeing that her partner's getting upset by it.
Mm,
And I see this a lot. Like I teach a lot of like the three listening levels. Level one's just all about me, 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 me. What do I think about what you said? What do I want out of this conversation? What do I feel about what has just been said? And when we're communicating with somebody else, we need to get out of our head and get into a level two listening, which is all about them. What do they think? What did they said something to me? What did they feel about that? What do they want out of this conversation? It's only when we stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about our partners that we can start understanding them and understand how they think and how they see the world.
yeah. I was watching, and I think sometimes it's cultural too. Different culture have the way that they communicate. I remember when I moved to Canada earlier on, for example, and the lady was like, "Oh, shut up, shut up." I'm like, "What?" For us, where I'm from, it's insults, right? But then I had to. I remember my brother was kind of offended by it, and I had to just watch her a little bit. And I watched that she was doing that to everybody, and when she was doing it, she was excited, she was happy, she was joking. So I had to relax and say, "Oh, this is how they communicate. This is how they talk here." So sometimes it's very important to understand your partner, especially where they're from. And also, say, if you're dating a Nigerian, for example, we tend to be loud. Some African people are loud. So she might not be upset with you. That's just the way she communicates. And it's important to know and learn your partner so that it doesn't, because you don't want to change them. In a way, like there's some things that is lovely and that's what make them happy and bubbling. You don't want to take that from them. So sometimes you may need to adjust, especially it's not going to cause you any harm. Sometimes you may have to do that. Sometimes you may have to unlearn, relearn, whatever that looks like. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I remember you talking about the cultural differences very much reminds me of me. So, in my practice, I've long since learned that people take words differently,
Yeah.
and I communicate much more in a violent way. So, for example, when I'm trying to cheer you on, I'll be like, "Go out there and crush it. You're gonna kill it out there. You're gonna smash it." And using all these more aggressive or violent terms. That's how I communicate. I love it. For example, I had a girl come up to me and she called me a hunter. I was like, "Yeah, I am a hunter. I'm a real go-getter." But I've noticed that some people they don't respond to that at all. I've had clients that are like, "Adam, I feel uncomfortable when you tell me that I'm gonna kill it. Like I'm not a violent person." And it's a culture thing. Some people it works for, other people it doesn't. And it's
Yeah.
just understanding, hey, if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for them, and just altering yourself to help communicate and bridge that discussion
Yeah.
or relationship.
Yeah, and I think another thing, ingredient that is very, aside from love, that is very important is alignment. Like when your values align. And I think for me, as a matchmaker, for example, that is what I do. I have to match you with someone that aligns with your values. And that's why we ask a lot of questions along with your personality, what you're going live, what's your priority. All those things are very important because you may love someone, you guys may have very strong chemistry, but if you don't have alignment in the core things, the core values, it may not work. How do you guys view money? How do you guys view fate? How do you even feel? How do you even your view about life? Like I met a girl, she said, when I matched a girl, one question she asked the guy was, what is your view about a particular person? Is the guy's like an activist, but he's on the negative side. So for her, she said she can never date a guy that likes that guy's point of view. And she asked the guy, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I like him." And she just told me, Evelyn, I can't go with this person. It's weird, but because the way you see life is very important, because it's not just that person; it's people that think similar to that person that she is referring to. And because that guy's view of life, based on the kind of content I create, does not align with her, and she doesn't want a person that have with that same mindset. And that was one thing that she would ask this kind of question. I'm like, that's interesting. Have you experienced that before?
Oh, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we often say opposites attract, but they don't.
Don't.
Shared values attract each other. And here's a great question for you, Evelyn, because I know many of our listeners are probably thinking about this, which is, how do you distinguish between a preference versus a value? Because I've had some clients that say, I value, I don't know, a person who's liberal.
Mhm.
That's not really a value. That's a
Yeah.
political stance. Which is, and like, what does it mean to be liberal? What it means to be liberal today was not what it meant 20 to 30 years ago. And so it's like, how do you
Yeah.
distinguish between just a preference
I think
versus a value?
values is what it's just like a company, right? Like values is what is your core, kind of what makes you you are, what makes you is like saying faith. Faith is very important to anybody. If you marry someone that is not very, is not a religious person, a very religious person, that would be an issue. It can work, that's if other values align, but it might be very challenging, right? um you value honesty. If you meet someone that is a liar, and that is against your value, you will struggle, you will have issues, it will be a problem for you. You value loyalty. Those are very core things. Those are things that are very key ingredients, very important, that if it's not there, it will make your life very miserable and difficult. Now, preferences is maybe you like a tall person. Now, you might think, I prefer, as a preference, it's not like nothing will happen to you, to not kill you if you marry a short person, right? If the person is kind and loving and all that, it will not affect you in any way. It will not, maybe the only issue that it will affect the chemistry. Maybe you might not feel connected to that person. And the thing is, I'm not going to say those things are not important. They are very, very important too, but it will not kill and destroy. Maybe it will affect you in a way, but those are things that are not like, it cannot really, it's not enough to disqualify someone. You know what I'm saying? It's just your personal preference, which means you can have a beautiful marriage and relationship with someone that is sure that is not your preference, right? So just is it, I would say preference, that's where I would differentiate it. Something that you just like, you prefer, but it's not like it do, like if it's not there, it's going to ruin you in any way. What core values are things that would really bother you, things that would give you some kind of struggle. It's going to be difficult. It's going to make life difficult for you if you ignore those things, right? So that's how I would basically explain it.
Well, I love that you said that way, because if your values are mismatched, you're going to get angry, you're going to get
Yeah,
upset. It's just almost like a invisible friction in the relationship. But a preference, I mean, yeah, I would love my girl to be 6 feet tall Amazon woman, but if she's not, I'm
it's
okay with that.
okay.
Like, we can still have a great relationship.
Yeah, it's just, and I think that's what a lot of people miss, because they start looking for preferences instead of values. and they go into relationship, they go out of love, because beauty is gonna fade, right? Those things can fade. The tall guy may shrink tomorrow, right? He might even lose his legs. You don't know. But it's the other aspect. Is it, love is important, but like we said, love is not enough. It's those other things that will keep you guys together. It's the friendship, it's the values, it's the goals that you guys are working towards together, that make you see that, wow, this guy is beyond his height or his circumstances, right? So, and those are important things, and that's why I tend to ask people those detailed questions too. And even when I meet someone, I could say, this person aligns with you, but you've said your preference when it comes to height is so height is not up to that height. Are you okay with that? I always give access, because, but when it's core values, I don't negotiate that. I won't even tell them about the person. But if it's just preference differences, I'd be like, this guy is good, is everything that you want in terms of your values, but is fair, is, has long hair, is different from what, but it's your choice, it's your decision to make. What do you think? So I know those things are not very important, but you can always negotiate that, right? Yeah.
I love it. I know there's a lot of guys out there that they will often just say things as core values. They're like, I want a beautiful woman. That's a core value. She has to be beautiful. It's like, well, no, that's a preference. And how I know it's always a preference is because when a guy meets a girl and their values align, they'll change that preference. And they're more than happy to date a woman
Yeah.
that is not like that 10 out of 10 model because the values all align. It's like, oh, okay, that's a preference, not a value.
Yeah, and I think one last one we'll talk about today for the time is like the respect and trust. Because for women, it's very important to be with a man that we trust. Because when we trust, then we feel safe. A woman can be fully herself and be, babyish or very vulnerable, or just herself, when she knows that she has this man that she trusts. Is it a man that she can tell things to and it would protect her? Is it a man that can stand for her anywhere, that kind of a thing? Is he very honest? Is he very those things are very important. And respect, I know respect is very important, especially for guys. What do you want to talk on that respect factor for guys?
Well, I would separate both of them. So trust is important and respect is equally as important. And to talk about respect specifically, if there's no respect in the relationship,
Yeah.
there's no relationship.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot. For example, a guy gets in a relationship with a girl, and this girl is making fun of him or taking jabs at him out in public. Like
Yeah.
she's disrespecting him. And he allows it to happen, which subconsciously gives her this go ahead that this is okay
It's
behavior to do.
okay.
And then she starts walking on him. And the relationship never lasts because it builds up resentment. And the guy feels like a doormat. He's like, why am I doing this? And eventually he does walk away. Like it's not a good foundation to build a relationship on.
Yeah.
And you have to respect your partner. It's the same thing with women. Guys have to respect their partner. Like if they don't, why are you in this relationship? Because that's
Hmm.
without respect, that's a road to a very abusive relationship.
Mm.
You have to have
Mm.
it.
Because yeah, as even respect for us, for women, translates to trust. Like if I'm going to be with my partner and he's just making fun of me in front of his friends or in front of his family, or he's just talking to me disrespectfully, you know outside, or in front of the kids, or all those kind of things, trust me, she can't feel safe with you. She can't trust you. So in a way, because for women it's different. I think for in Africa would say, like Nigeria would say, a man biggest what a man values the most is respect. A man values respect, and even like Christian will say in the Bible, God gave the woman the instruction to respect her husband. and the man the responsibility or the instruction to love his wife. Why? Because respect. A lot of people that have the challenges with respect is women struggle, because when you're getting close to your man, you guys are used to each other, have seen each other's body, like it's just seem as your friend and all. So a lot of disrespect can come from it, right? So you have to be, as a woman, you have to be very conscious of that. As a man too, you can be so busy with life that you don't even have the attention to pour love into your partner. And it's just that reminder that, listen, take that extra step, be intentional about loving you know, and loving your partner basically. And like I said, it's both are very important, because without those two, I bet it's with you, the relationship is going to be very difficult.
What I always see trust, that lack of trust is usually a sign of disrespect.
Yes.
Where if you're being disrespectful to your partner, it's not like immediately they're not going to trust you. It's usually disrespect over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And then eventually they're like, I don't trust you. And you can always tell that trust is broken because it's weird to describe, but it's almost like watching somebody wear a mask with their partner. And so I see a lot of guys when they stop trusting their female spouse, they'll start become very complacent. Yes, ma'am. Of course. Whatever you want, hon. Yeah, if you want to do this, go ahead. Very agreeable. And it's because they don't
Yeah.
trust them anymore. And they're just wearing this mask to protect themselves from their partner because there's there's no respect. And I think part of keeping that respect though is calling out bad behavior when it's happening.
Exactly.
If your woman is acting inappropriate, you got to call them out. And if your guy's acting inappropriate, you got to call them out and say, "Hey, this is not okay." Because unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to teach people to not behave badly, but unfortunately, people take each other for granted. And if we allow it, they just walk on each other.
That's true. That's true. And so, if we bring all this together, the message is simple: love matters, but love alone is not enough. And a lasting relationship also need healthy communication, shared values and goals, and mutual respect and trust. So, Adam, do you have any last word to say before?
Yeah, if you guys love this episode and liked it, please like it, subscribe, and if you're struggling in regards with your relationships, feel free to reach out to Evelyn or myself. Our information is down below, and we're happy to sit down one-on-one and help you get to where you want to go.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. And we can't wait to see you again in the next episode. Bye for now.